On another important matter, yesterday, President Trump and President Putin spoke about the need for peace and a ceasefire in the Ukraine war. Both leaders agreed this conflict needs to end with a lasting peace and also stressed the need for improved bilateral relations between the United States and Russia. President Trump also spoke with President Zelensky this morning to align both Russia and Ukraine in terms of their needs and requests. As President Trump has said repeatedly, the precious lives and money that both Ukraine and Russia have been spending in this war would be better spent on the needs of their people. This terrible conflict would have never started with President Trump in charge, but he's determined to end it once and for all. Jennifer.
On Ukraine, can you say, is the White House going to pause foreign military aid or intelligence sharing with Ukraine, as Russia says it's pushing for, and then have a follow-up on the Federal Trade Commission?
Sure. When it comes to Ukraine, I do have a statement for you from the National Security Advisor and also the Secretary of State. First, I'd like to reiterate what the President said earlier following his call with President Zelensky this morning. He said he just completed a very good telephone call with President Zelensky. It lasted approximately 1 hour. Much of the discussion was based on the call made yesterday with President Putin in order to align both Russia and Ukraine in terms of their requests and needs. We are very much on track, and I will ask Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Mike Waltz to give an accurate description of the points discussed. That statement will be put out shortly. Well, I have that statement for you right here. Bear with me as I read it. Today, President Trump and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky had a fantastic phone conversation. President Zelensky thanked President Trump for a productive start for the work of the Ukrainian and American teams in Jeddah on March 11th. The meeting of the senior officials from both nations significantly helped in moving toward ending the war. President Zelensky thanked President Trump for the support of the United States, especially the Javelin missiles that President Trump was first to provide in his efforts towards peace. The leaders agreed Ukraine and America will continue working together to bring about a real end to the war, and that lasting peace under President Trump's leadership can be achieved. President Trump fully briefed President Zelensky on his conversation with Putin and the key issues discussed. They reviewed the situation in Kursk and agreed to share information closely between their defense staffs as the battlefield situation evolved. President Zelensky asked for additional air defense systems to protect his civilians, particularly Patriot missile systems, and President Trump agreed to work with him to find what was available, particularly in Europe. The two leaders also agreed on a partial ceasefire against energy. Technical teams will meet in Saudi Arabia in the coming days to discuss broadening the ceasefire to the Black Sea on the way to a full ceasefire. They agreed this could be the first step toward the full end of the war and ensuring security. President Zelensky was grateful for the president's leadership in this effort and reiterated his willingness to adopt a full ceasefire. President Trump also discussed Ukraine's electrical supply and nuclear power plants. He said that the United States could be very helpful in running those plants with its electricity and utility expertise. American ownership of those plants would be the best protection for that infrastructure and support for Ukrainian energy infrastructure. President Zelensky also thanked President Trump for continuing to push humanitarian concerns, including the exchange of prisoners of war. He noted they had just had a successful exchange and thanked the president for his leadership on that. President Trump also asked President Zelensky about the children who had gone missing from Ukraine during the war, including the ones that had been abducted, and President Trump promised to work closely with both parties to help make sure those children were returned home. They agreed all parties must continue the effort to make a ceasefire work. The presidents noted the positive work of their advisors and representatives, especially Secretary Rubio, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, Special Envoy Kellogg, and others. The presidents instructed their teams to move ahead with the technical issues related to implementing and broadening the partial ceasefire. The presidents instructed their advisors and representatives to carry out this work as quickly as possible. The presidents emphasized that in further meetings, the teams can agree on all necessary aspects of advancing toward lasting peace and security. That is a lengthy statement that was just given to me, so thanks for bearing with me. Our office will, of course, provide this after. And as you know, as I just pointed out in the statement, the president's team of negotiators and national security experts will be heading to Saudi again later this week to continue working on and ironing out the details. But I would just like to emphasize we have never been this close to peace, and it's only because of President Trump that we are here. I think a couple of years ago, as you all reported on the war, it was incomprehensible to have a partial ceasefire in this conflict. And today, that is true because of the leadership of this president.
So you
Mary.
said they agreed to closely share information between their defense staffs. Does that mean all intelligence sharing will continue? So the White House is rejecting Russia's request to pause that?
Intelligence sharing in terms of defense for Ukraine will continue to be shared. Jeff.
I could ask something else about the phone call yesterday. There was a couple different readouts from the Kremlin and the U.S. on a couple different points. One was energy and infrastructure. The U.S. statement said energy and infrastructure. The Kremlin said energy infrastructure. What is your understanding of what the actual substance of that disagreement was? Then I have one other question on that.
I would defer you to the readout that was provided by the White House. That's our understanding, and that's the truth. Deanna, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Caroline. On the call with Zelensky, did they discuss the minerals deal at all? Is that back on the table, and what do the Ukrainians have to do to get that back on the table? And then one on the Russia call as well.
Again, I just provided a very lengthy readout of the call that was provided by the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor. And now we have moved beyond the economic minerals deal. We are at a place of peace. We're at a partial ceasefire, and we're moving towards a full ceasefire and a long-standing peace in this conflict. And that's great news for the American public.
The Kremlin readout mentioned that Trump and Putin spoke about potential U.S.-Russia hockey games. And the Kremlin readout also said that Russia wanted the U.S. to stop U.S. intelligence and U.S. funding to Ukraine. The president has said that that conversation did not happen. Just wondering if you can get us any more clarity on that. And also, again, if it's energy infrastructure or if it's energy and infrastructure, because I think there is a big difference between that.
Again, as for the readouts of the call, I would defer you to ours. And when it comes to the topic of hockey, it did come up. However, we're more interested in securing a peace deal than scheduling hockey games right now. Kate, go ahead.
Is the president still considering pressuring Russia with sanctions or tariffs to try to get a full ceasefire? And is there any kind of deadline or timeline that the White House has in mind for when that pressure might ramp up?
Again, the president had a nearly 2-hour-long call with President Putin yesterday. We provided a readout of that call, and we have his negotiating team heading to the Middle East this week to continue these discussions in regards to sanctions and any other details. I'm not going to give a readout of those from this podium. Philip.
Thank you. Two questions. First, just a follow-up on the readouts from those calls. When it comes to the discrepancies between the U.S. and Russian readout of that call between President Trump and Putin, is it the president's assessment that something is getting lost in translation, or does he believe that the Russians are trying to play games here?
Nope. The president believes in his team that put the readout out, and he also put his own out on Truth Social. We've been incredibly transparent about all of the president's calls with foreign leaders, and again, I would defer you to the readout.
And then following up
Michael.
on...
Thank you, Caroline. White House said yesterday that gas prices across the U.S. have fallen for the fourth straight week. 34 states now seeing gas under $3 a gallon. This limited ceasefire with Ukraine regarding oil refineries, energy, will that affect gas prices here in the U.S.?
Well, it's certainly the president's hope that gas prices will continue to fall, and he's working every single day to ensure that we do. As you just mentioned, there's been very encouraging data. Inflation is cooling and gas prices are falling. The president has established a National Energy Dominance Council, and it's ultimately the president's goal, and this administration is working hard on it every single day, to increase our energy production right here in the United States of America, to have it Trump energy boom like we saw in our first term, which will not only lead to lower fuel prices here at home, but also lessen the rate of inflation that was created by the previous administration. Annie, go ahead.
Thanks so much. In the statement that you read, you referenced the president's interest in helping return Ukrainian children to their parents, to their families. There's an organization that provides intel and information about those children that their aid has been cut. It's a Yale University program that used foreign aid. And I'm curious if, as part of this new thinking with Ukraine, that aid might be unfrozen.
I have no updates about that or that specific program at this time. Karen.
Thanks, Caroline. Just to follow up on your answer to the question on the minerals deal, you said that the White House has moved beyond the minerals deal. What does that mean? Is that no longer on the table?
Nope. It means the minerals deal was that first set of framework that you all saw in that very public meeting with President Zelensky and President Trump in the Oval Office. We are now focused on a long-term peace agreement. As you know, on that deal, or that meeting between President Zelensky and President Trump, the Ukrainian president at the time wasn't talking about a greater peace deal. We are now at that place where we are talking about that. So we've moved beyond just the economic minerals deal framework, and we're looking at a lasting ceasefire. Right now we're at a partial ceasefire, but again, the president is sending his highly skilled, intelligent, and experienced team to Saudi Arabia later this week to continue fighting for peace in this conflict. And I would just reiterate one more time, we have never been closer to peace than we are today. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you later.
Carolyn, you Israel Gaza question?